Wonderful to see such a beautiful crowd here tonight. It's beautiful and sunny out, and we appreciate you all coming in on the evening like this to celebrate our local women artists with us. Tonight's topic was inspired by the special exhibition that we have right across the way from us, Western Women Artists of the American West, Trailblazers at the Turn of the 20th Century. So that exhibition features 5 women artists who were all ranchers, as well as painters and photographers, and were, as we like to say, trailblazers. And tonight, we want to recognize our local and contemporary women trailblazers who we're just so delighted could make tonight and be here to be part of our panel. So thank you all for coming. I also want to thank all of our members and donors for History Jackson Hole. You really help make programs like this free and open to the public, so thank you for supporting us and being here. And I'd also like to take a second to introduce our moderator tonight. Kathryn McGuire is our education director, and this was also Kathryn's idea to have this panel of celebrating our women artists in town. So without further ado, Kathryn.
Okay, I'm going to try this. Does this feel like it's working? Okay, Erin, I'm going to. Again, thank you for being here. One addition I want to add, if you need a restroom, you haven't been here before, there are 2 on this floor at the end. And we ask if you enjoy a wonderful beverage, you find a recycling at the end of the evening, just so we can continue to be an environmentally friendly. We are going to get through about 7 questions with our lovely 5 panelists. And we hope at the end we will also have time for some questions from the audience. So as you are listening, if something comes up that you'd like to ask, just hold on to that and we'll have some time at the end for you guys. So my first question for this panel is, when and why did you first come to Jackson Hole? A question many of us find ourselves asking at points. And what made you choose to make this place your home? So more than a stopping point.
Is this working?
You might need to hold it a little closer.
Is this working now? Okay. My name is Erin O'Connor. I came to Jackson in 1987, and I had been working up in Yellowstone National Park, and I did that thing where I ran out of money, and this was as far as I got. But you know, that was just the easy part of the story to tell, because there was a boy involved, and anyway, I ended up staying despite that. Because I just loved the people and the inspiration. And I mean, it was just like one of the most tremendous communities I have ever experienced.
I'm Jennifer Hoffman, and I came here 29 years ago this summer with the idea that I wanted to paint landscapes. I came here from Pennsylvania and just sold everything, loaded stuff in my car, and drove here with no real plan. Thought maybe I'd be here a year or 2 and never left. So, I mean, there's no better place to be a landscape painter. And I met an amazing variety of incredible artists when I got here, and things just kind of fell into place. It's a wonderful place to just be an artist and learn from other people and share in that creative spirit. So here I am 29 years later.
Hi, I'm Lindsay Linton Buk, and I'm originally from Powell, Wyoming. My dad and our family goes back there to 1878. If you ever drive through Meeteetse, my relatives started the Meeteetse Mercantile and the first bank of Meeteetse. But my mom's from Connecticut. She also came to Wyoming for a boy. Not my dad, but never left. And her first teaching job was in Powell, but they both loved to ski. And so they bought a house here in the 80s. So my brothers and I spent a lot of time here in the summers growing up. I was a ski racer. I grew up ski racing with Mercedes daughters. So spent time here in the winter too. I never thought I would come back to Wyoming. When I graduated from high school in Powell, I retraced my mom's steps back east, lived in New York City. I decided to come back to Jackson, where my parents are now based, as a transition, and here I am. I moved back in 2013, so 12 years later.
My name is Kathryn Mapes Turner, and I want to just start by reiterating a gratitude and thanks to everybody who's here. This is an amazing group. I'm so happy to see all of your faces. I didn't have a choice coming to Jackson. I just hit the cosmic lottery and got to be born here. I'm so grateful to my mother because she followed a boy here, my father. And she really took one for the team to have for the chance my brothers and I to be born and raised here. So thanks to my mom, Mary Kay. I was fortunate to grow up on the Triangle X Ranch in Moran inside of Grand Teton National Park, which was a charmed childhood. And then I did leave for a little while and went to undergraduate and graduate school in the Midwest and the East Coast, and got a real job there teaching art. And my mom and dad thought they had launched at least one kid into a respectable profession, and with a benefit package and healthcare and everything. Well, I had that as soon as that got secured, I announced to them that I was going to quit my job and move back to Wyoming and become an artist. And they were very patient because who does that for a job? I might as well have told them I was going to be a, I don't know, rock star or something. Or start a band. So they've been great and have been the most supportive folks an aspiring artist could have asked for. So thank you for being here.
I came here in 1980. I had been working at the hospital in Idaho Falls as a surgical tech and always wanted to be an artist. And there were two quite well-known artists living here that I had heard of. One was Conrad Schwaring, and the other was John Clymer, and they both lived here. And in my off hours in the 3 to 11 in the night shift at the hospital, I would, when nothing else was going on in surgery, I would draw. And as I always had all my life. And pretty soon I thought, I don't have any reason not to try to be an artist that I've wanted to do since second grade. So I'm going to quit my job and move to Jackson, and maybe one of those guys could help me. And Connie Schwaring, his name was in the book, and I ended up calling him to see if he still taught, because he did used to teach here. And he said, I don't teach anymore, but I got a friend that knows how I paint, and you could call Greg McCuron. So Greg became my first mentor, and that was in 1980. And I didn't really intend to stay either. I got almost any kind of part-time job, most of which had to do with the outdoors, either cowboying or fencing or haying or painting somebody's house, whatever it took to pay my bills, and started painting. Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot my name. Kathy KJ Wipfler.
Thank you guys for starting that share. I think one of the things we love about being here is this place and the inspiration for the art, as we have so many beautiful paintings even behind you all, and just the beauty of the small town. So fun little story. Erin and I just realized we are across the street neighbors in this moment, and I've lived there for about 4 years. You know what? Can I take the other microphone? We'll just turn it up. You're welcome. All right. Thank you for bearing with me with that and also moving past it. So we started a little bit of this with Kathy, but I would like to ask the question of how did you start as an artist? And I know it's not a linear process, but take that with what you will of where you began.
Some of my earliest memories were of waking up really early before my mom and dad and sitting at the little Formica table that was in the kitchen and just sitting there and drawing and drawing and drawing. My dad was in graduate school, so he had tons of typing paper and pencils, and I dove in, and those are my earliest memories, just sitting there and drawing. And I never stopped drawing. I never really stopped painting. But my well-meaning parents talked me out of art school. So I pursued anthropology. And, and anyway, so two things happened when I got to Jackson, after the boy and all of that. Was I was trying to make enough money to leave, and a friend got me a job working as a studio assistant for an artist up in Moran, Bill Schenk. And I worked for him for 3 years. And I even went down to Phoenix one winter and worked for him down in the studio there. And it was I don't know if you were ever up at his place, the old Rubber Snake Ranch, but he had an amazing art collection. Like the Southwest art, he introduced me to the Taos 10 and like a lot of turn of the century art that were just incredible to me. And being down in Phoenix for that one winter, I met so many other artists, and it just opened up my whole world to the possibilities. And then it wasn't working for him anymore. And part two is that I decided I was going to go and get a formal art education. It was time. And I decided I was going to go to Old Lyme, Connecticut. But it was winter and I was waiting for the application window to open up. And so I took this class, this month-long class with this guy. His name was Greg McCurron. And I mean, that guy blew my mind. I mean, he was just from the get-go, he was talking about things that just went way over my head. And he was so tough on people. I saw him give people critiques and make them cry. But I never took it personally because I was there to learn. And at the end of that month, he said to me, he said, "Erin, I don't think you need to go to art school." He said, "You can if you want." He said, "But you're going to spend years drawing a lot of this and doing a lot of that and stuff you don't need to do." He said, "And you're going to end up really deep in debt." He said, "You know what you need to do? You need to go outside and paint." And I took that to heart, and I'm still doing it.
I love that. I love that so much. I also started drawing like as soon as I could hold a pencil or a crayon. I remember getting my first set of oil paints. There was like a local artist. So I grew up in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. I remember getting up early in the morning and turning on the TV and just waiting for Bob Ross to come on. As a kid, I mean, I was little, like 6 or 7. I loved watching him. And then somewhere around 9, my mom said, "Okay, let's go to this artist's studio because he sells some art supplies." And we bought this little tiny kit of oil paints, and it had a little tiny glass jar of solvent, which I think it was turpentine actually, and it smelled amazing. And my mom wouldn't let me use it inside. So I would sit outside on the sidewalk out back of our house with my little pad of canvas and paint right on the canvas paper. And it was just magic. And it was all I wanted to do. And then I went to college and kind of same thing. I was like, my parents were like, "You need to do something that, you could make money at." So I went in as an English major. And to their chagrin, after a semester and a half, I started the process of changing my major to art. So I got a BFA from the University of Delaware. And then a couple years after I graduated, I moved out here because I just wasn't making art. I was working in jobs that I didn't really like. And I got here and almost immediately met a landscape painter and also ended up working as a studio assistant for him, and that was Scott Christensen. And that was an amazing education because I met a ton of specifically plein air artists, which is what I wanted to do. And I did lots of things in his studio. So I got to learn a lot about how to be a working artist and, you know, reaching out to galleries and photographing art and antiquing frames and stretching canvases and all of that kind of stuff. And that from there, I ended up at the Wildlife Art Museum for about 7 years. And that was an incredible experience as well. And in that time period, I also met Greg McCurran, who also became a mentor for me. Not to mention Ms. KJ Wipfler down at the end here, who was one of a huge encouragement to me. I don't remember exactly how we met. But I was a baby painter, a terrible baby painter. And she just gave me so much encouragement. And I feel like that's one of the reasons that I've stayed here for so long is that there are so many incredible artists and they're so generous and so it's such a community of people here and they're willing to share their knowledge and commiserate on the struggles and then Kathryn and I ended up owning Trio Fine Art together for a bunch of years. So yeah, it's a windy path, but it's been an incredible journey. So, and it continues to be an incredible journey.
So I would say my art is more along the lines of storytelling through photography and interviews and an exhibit and a book that I'm working on right now. And so my earliest memory of being fascinated with people and their connection to place goes back to our home in Powell. And next to the fireplace, there was a bookshelf with rows and rows of National Geographic magazines. And an entire universe lay on those shelves. And I also took a very roundabout way to become a photographer myself. I was a dancer from when I was 2. I was really passionate about that medium. I moved to LA after I studied history for my bachelor's degree to pursue dance professionally, to realize that was better suited as my passion, not my profession. And it was kind of in that liminal in between period of trying to put it all together, my love for stories, but wanting to be creative and wanting to have a job that would encompass that. I ended up going back to photography school at Northwest College in Powell, where I grew up. It's a 2-year program. I had already spent a lot of money on my bachelor's, and so I just wanted something that I could really learn a trade. And that just rocketed me on a totally new path. I moved to New York immediately after I graduated, started interning for one of my photography idols, Rodney Smith. He was an amazing, amazing commercial and portrait photographer. And then I stayed. I did the New York hustle. I ended up working for a headshot photographer in New York, which was not my plan, but he was the only one who called me back after my numerous cold calls. But that was an invaluable experience because when I had completed my New York experience and I'd moved back here to Jackson, really as what I thought would be a temporary situation, eventually I started looking around the community and thinking, well, why can't I make a mark here? Why can't I do what I was doing in New York, which was taking these more modern headshots? My mom's a realtor. I thought, well, there's about 700 realtors in this town, probably more by now, who need a headshot. And no one, or I thought there was kind of this void where there aren't many studio photographers. Most people are landscape or wedding. So I thought I could have a niche, and I opened my studio in 2014, and that's still my bread and butter. But then, I've kind of, my artistry and creativity means that insatiable hunger and curiosity is never fully realized. So the last 10 years of my life, in addition to my business, has been devoted to this project to document women's stories across our state through photography and other mediums, through the interviews, the exhibit, and now book. So yes, it's been a very, I think when you're a creative, you just are very much in the present, just responding to those doors opening. And it is scary because there's not a direct path, but it also, I think, embodying that courage and just walking through those doors, at least for me, has just been an incredible experience and opened up opportunities that I never knew existed, especially coming back home. It's been this really full circle journey of never thinking I could have a future in Wyoming to having so many incredible opportunities as a result of trying and just seeing what I could create here.
Wow. When I'm looking out on all your faces, and I realize that this community absolutely raised me as an artist, and I want to thank all of you for that. I'm looking at my algebra teacher right now. Geometry. So it was very, very clear, very, very early on that art and making art is exactly what I came here to do. I'm very grateful that that clarity was early for me. But then along the way, I had such good fortune of meeting just the right people at just the right time that got me where I am today. So I went to school at Moran School, and it was really, the arts were very much a part of my elementary school. And we had this school, my favorite day was Thursday. And the reason for that was because that's when we had art class, of course. And the way that we had art class was incredibly special and unique. And that's because it was such a small school. We didn't have an art teacher. The art teacher would travel around to all the small outlying schools, Moran, Kelly, Wilson, and they traveled in a magic bus. The bus was gutted on the inside. There were no seats. This was before OSHA ruined the fun. And the inside, well, on Thursday afternoons, we'd crawl in the bus, and inside was everything you'd want as an aspiring artist. There were easels and paints and brushes and pottery wheels and looms and boxes of construction paper and buttons and glue. There was everything you'd ever want in this mobile studio. And then, when we were done, hours later, we'd file out and the bus would roll down to the next school. So the fact that I lived for Thursdays meant that this is what I wanted to do. I just always knew that I wanted to make art. Now the question becomes, first of all, how do you make art? That's a very good question, and one I didn't know the answer to. And then how do you make a living? So my next spark of good fortune was when I was in high school, and I got the world's best summer job, which was working for Michelle Sullivan at the Grantee Snake River Institute. Does anybody remember the Snake River Institute? Best high school summer job ever for a aspiring artist, because what the Snake River Institute did was it was a set of workshops for adults of humanities as it was related to the landscape. My job was to fetch sandwiches and make sure everybody were hydrated and and the teacher could get to the location on time or something like that, high school kid. Well, Doyen brought me, just, I don't know if you can see this, but I'll pass them around. She brought me this photo of me where I was supposed to be working. Well, I'm not. I'm at an easel with a brush in my mouth. And that's because Ned Jacob, the teacher, who's the finest horse, I think, equine draftsman our country will ever see, he was a teacher that week. And he saw the hunger in me, and he said, hey, you kid, get over here and grab my brushes, use my easel. Here's the paint, get to work. And that's the kind of thing that's happened to me. I met other workshop teachers, Skip Whitcomb, who became a mentor, and he said the best thing you can do is hang out with this Jennifer Hoffman in Jackson Hole. Another one that they told me to hang out was this lady here, Kathy Wipfler, who was also painting her little heart out at that time. And she said, "Hey, kid, you come with me." Again, I'm in high school. I have chills telling you this because she was so generous. And not only did she take me painting on location, but she gave me a whole stack of books that I still have. Kathy Wipfler, everybody. So that's why I say this community is what raised me. I then when I came back to Jackson, I had a real job which calmed down John and Mary Kay a little bit. My day job was working at the National Museum of Wildlife Art with Amy Goycochea. And every day I got to spend time with that collection. Oh, and I worked with Jen. Such a small world. That collection became another teacher. What are the chances in this little tiny town that art student that I was would have that caliber of a collection to be surrounded by every day in her day job? And then I'd go home and paint my little heart. Again, I was an awful employee. Ron Gessler would attest to that. And Amy, you know it was bad because all I wanted to do was look at the art. And that art collection became a teacher. All of the people at the museum were so supportive of the fact that really my heart was in painting. And when I left there, they gave me some art supplies and said, "Go get them, kiddo." So I've been learning ever since. I'm inspired by all of you. Katie Ann Fox, that painting you did was amazing. The last one I saw you do. My last bit of good luck was to be in a community of a disproportionate number of art makers, dancers, photographers, filmmakers, and then a disproportionate of art supporters. Karen, Tara, so many of you, Mercedes, who have inspired me. Another inspiration here, right here. Well, this room is full of artists. Be careful where you're sitting. K-Strap, and you should be up here. So those are why I wouldn't change my childhood, but the chance to be a working artist in Jackson Hole is really special. So thanks to all of you.
So my beginning in the art world was in 2nd grade. We were studying about where milk came from, which is cows. And we all had to draw a cow. And I was deathly shy. I could barely look at people, let alone talk to them. We were raised very rural, an hour from a town, and we had cows. So we had to draw a cow, and mine was deemed by the whole class as the best drawn cow that day. And the teacher announced she was going to hang it up for parent-teacher night, and I was sunk. I was going to be an artist. And so as like Kathryn was saying about your parents want you to have a saleable trade, I didn't go to college, but I did go to a trade school and became a surgical technician, which I loved. You get to scrub in with the doc and hold back guts and hand him his clamps and sutures. And if he was in a hurry, he'd let you suture if you were good enough. And growing up on a ranch, you see a lot of dead stuff, and surgery didn't bother me. So that was a great stepping stone. But as I said earlier, when nothing was going on at close to 11 at night, I was drawing at the desk in the office in the surgery room. And I thought, well, I'm going to move to Jackson, which I did. I told you that part. And when I got here, Greg took me out once a week. Connie gave me his number. Conrad Schwerin gave me his number. Well, if I could see your work, I could tell you if I thought I could help you. When would you like to come up and show me some work? And I said, anytime. He said, how about this afternoon? Okay. And he looked at some of my work and he said, okay, I can help you. And here's my deal. You pick a day of the week, any day of the week. At the time, his wife was working for this park, and they lived at the employee housing there by Taggart Lake. And pick any day of the week because I go out painting every day, and you be at my house at 8 o'clock or I will leave without you. I go, okay, what am I going to owe you? He says, bring my lunch. no tuna fish. So that's what we did all summer long. And he was very good. It wasn't really a class because he was a working artist, but I got to watch him. And we'd sit around at lunch and talk about art and what we were seeing in the Tetons. He's the guy that made sure I knew that there was a whole mile different distance between Tiwanaut and the Grand, an aerial mile. And then he started telling me about how to portray that in your painting. And this went on for all summer. And in the fall, I went cowboying for some money, and he went hunting. So we kind of split ways as far as the painting together went, but we remained friends throughout the rest of our lives. He was very generous. And eventually I was invited to be in one of the best galleries Jackson Hole will ever see, which is now long gone, and was called Powder River Gallery, run by Jenny Promack, owned and run by Jenny Promack. And she allowed, by then Tim Lawson had moved to town, and she had deceased art in there, a small gallery on King Street here. And she had some deceased art, quite a bit actually, and she handled a few living painters, Skip Whitcomb, Hollis Williford, Bob Barlow, Ned Jacob when she could get a painting from him, and Tim and myself. And so it was a great deal. Her father was the one that took the empty shell of what became known as the Cowboy Hall of Fame in Oklahoma City. They had the cowmen around there had this great idea to build a Western art museum, but they ran out of funding, and they hired her father to regenerate the funding and handle that, which he did. And he also started a big art show that all the best known artists, including Conrad Schwering and John Clymer, were in, called the Western NAWA, North American Western Artists Show and Group. So anyway, that's sort of how I got involved in art in Jackson. And I was lucky enough to get invited by hook or crook, through Jenny actually, that owned Powder River Gallery. We had a sculptor here named George Northup, and he was very good friends with Bob Kuhn. And he talked Bob Kuhn into coming out here by telling him that he was going to rent a dude ranch across the river south of Crescent H. And all these artists would be, the well-known working artists would be there. And you could come and join us. And so he did. And he got all those great, mostly wildlife artists to come because he told them all that Bob Kuhn was giving a painting workshop. And every day Bob Kuhn and George would leave right after breakfast. And I'm like, so where's the workshop? There wasn't one. They went fishing and they just slip out. And so the rest of us just painted together off and on. And I got to meet some of the most amazing, important artists and up and coming people like myself also were there. There's a Bob Kuhn book that Adam wrote, and it's for sale at the museum, I'm sure, about Bob Kuhn. And there's a picture of us all in there. George was with it enough to get a picture. Even Bob Kuhn was in the picture. And so I was happy, and I gained mentors there, and they were Skip Whitcomb, Hollis Williford, and Bill Reese, basically. And they liked to come here painting, and they insisted that when they came here to paint, I would come with them, drop everything, you're coming with us all day and for a week or two. And they were very generous with their knowledge. And I guess that's about it. That's my story.
So one of the things that I asked all these lovely women to do in preparation for this event was to bring a singular piece of art that they felt would be an introduction to who they were as an artist. That's a hard thing to do for these women who have created a lot of art. And so I'm going to give them a minute to explain their choice and maybe sort of bob your head one way so that the group can see the easel behind you. And we'll see how that goes. Lindsay, you're at a little bit of an advantage with the large screen.
I'm actually going to stand up here. Okay, so this painting is called Seize the Day, and obviously it's Buck Mountain. But the reason I brought this was because it symbolizes to me my favorite time in the valley when it's summer and it's early in the morning, and it's cool and quiet, and it seems before anybody else has gotten up, and to be out on location painting when that first little bit of light comes and hits the peaks of the mountains and turns the snow, pink and then orange and yellow, and yeah, it's just a real visceral memory for me. I love painting early in the morning. What was the other question? Oh, also another reason I brought it was because I could fit it under my arm. It wasn't really heavy and big and cumbersome, so.
So I might grab this actually. Yeah, that would be great. Thanks. Would you like to walk up and down the aisle? So this is a pastel. So probably what I'm best known for are my pastels the past 15 years. Although I work in oil and printmaking and lots of other things. But I brought this piece because it is kind of about where my artwork has been going recently. You can put it down if your arm gets tired. You are good. You're really good. That's right. Yes, Erin is a fabulous waitress too. So she's got a lot of past tests. Lots of excellent upper body strength. So this piece is done in pastel. I love birds. And so my many years of painting outdoors, taking in the landscape, informs the paintings that I do in the studio now. And this piece actually was inspired by my kiddo. Kai is really into Japanese culture and vintage Japanese prints. And so this long format is something that I find really, really beautiful. And there are a number of different artists who specialize in birds in this format with a kind of a close-in image of the environment around the bird. And then it just becomes almost about the quietness and the reflection and this kind of gestural shape. And so that is something that I've been exploring a little bit in my pastels. I'm interested in subtlety and but still nature and color and all of that stuff. So that's that. I don't remember the name. I'll get back to you.
So my works are pretty large scale. They're part of a traveling exhibit that's been traveling since 2019 at this point. It just reopened in the Britain Museum over in Sheridan. So if you're in that area, you can go see my exhibit with these portraits. I decided to show this one from the exhibit for a few reasons. This is the artist Nell G. She was a prolific creator, Wyoming creator from Banter, Wyoming, and she painted 10 by 30 foot abstract expressionist canvases, which take up about this entire wall. So just a fierce drive to express herself on this massive scale. And when I was conceptualizing my project and talking to people about who I should interview and photograph, their name came up a lot. And but I think a lot of my work is the core of it is about adventure and discovery. And so this portrait for me and the process of taking her photo was that, because it was she was the very first person I worked with for my project. I interviewed and photographed her in December 2016 to get to Banter, which is in Buffalo from Jackson. It's 7 hours one way, 358 miles. You're crossing a lot of hibernating tundra and prairie at that time. And when I got to Nell G's ranch and her home, which she designed, I entered this world of just color and aliveness. And everywhere you look, there's a tapestry from one of her travels to primitive lands and sculptures and just complete aliveness. And I just remember walking in and being like, where am I? This is amazing. And I had also packed my entire photo studio with me for that first trip because I had no idea what I was going to do. So I had every light, every modifier, every backdrop. And she was such an amazing first person to work with because she's a creator. So it's this co-creation. And I did try every light and modifier and backdrop for her shoot. But of course, her canvases were the perfect backdrop. The other thing that's a big contrast from my commercial work, which is more retouched and styled and produced, I really wanted this project to be a relief for me from that. So I shot all film. So I brought my tool that I used for this project in particular, which is this very heavy machine. It's a medium format film camera. And so that was the other thing. When I went to shoot in LG, I was like, I better get this because I'm traveling 14 hours and 700 miles round trip. And with film, you don't get to check the back of your camera to make sure you got it. So is this leap of faith, this adventure, and then just getting these shots back that to me were just beyond what I could have ever hoped to create, were just this magical moment that just started this adventure of production for me.
I love it, Lindsay. The reason I became a painter is because photography is just too hard. Well, I was tickled that we got to bring paintings because I think it's way more fun to look at paintings than talk to hear us talking. So this is the painting that I brought. Oh, thanks, Lindsay. You're so sweet. Thank you. Thank you. This is the view from the Triangle X. So when you grow up and you look at this every morning when you wake up, how can you not become an artist is my question. This is early morning with the sun just hitting the mountains, kind of like Erin was talking about. And one of my most recently finished pieces, so that's why I brought it. But I also wanted you to see what I was blessed to greet every day when I grew up. So what we're going to do is when we look at this, I'm going to sort of tell you how to paint. All right, because that's what my teacher said. You just put the right color in the right place and the right time, and then the right kind of edges. So that's all it is. With this painting, what's important are the lights and the darks. I love to paint tonally, where there's a wide range of colors. Everything kind of is in a tight color range. So it's the values, it's the light and the dark that are important. The other thing that I really love to play with is edges. So when one shape meets another shape, is that going to be hard edge? Maybe you can find some places here where it's a hard edge, where one shape is bumped into another shape and you can tell the difference. Or is it a soft edge where the shape blends slowly into the next one? And so in this particular piece, winter is a fabulous time to explore edges because there are soft edges and there are hard edges. Oil paint, this is an oil painting, and oil paint gives you a lot of opportunities to play with the differences, where you can use your palette knife and literally carve into the paint, or while the paint is still wet, you can kind of smush it together and create a transition that's gentle and soft, just like winter does so beautifully. Thank you, Lindsay. She's getting her, she's got her biceps curls going here today. So a story a name that you've heard all of us painters talk about is Greg McCurron. And Greg McCurron he will go down as one of the finest painters of the Grand Tetons in our valley, along with Connie Schwerin. I have spent my entire life trying to capture the essence of these mountains and these peaks. And I feel like I always fall short. What is especially challenging is that they're changing all the time with the light, with the weather. The other thing that's challenging is that the Tetons are a friend of all of you. And whether or not you're an artist, you are familiar with the portrait of them, so to speak. So you know when it's off. You know when we have our proportions wrong. You know what, you might not be able to put your finger on it, but you'll be like, yeah, it's off. You know, the sleeping Indian nose is just too big. So I asked Greg McCurron, this fabulous teacher or painter of the Tetons, I said, will you teach me how to paint the Tetons? And he says, no. I said, no. He said, no, I won't teach you how to paint the Tetons until you've drawn them 100 times. And that's where it all comes back to is you can't be a painter unless you know how to draw. And so all of us are forever trying to up our drawing game. And one of the things that Greg did for all of us is that he opened his studio on Tuesdays in the winter, and we all pitched in to hire a model, and we just drew our little hearts out, and it was grueling. I could hardly finish a sentence by the end of that drawing session because we would the model would change their poses so rapidly, and we had to just really try and keep up. And that ability to draw was invaluable to all of us. So here's to Greg McCurron and what he taught us.
Hold on to that first.
Yeah, I got you.
So this painting is from near Triangle X. It's a secret place. I'm not telling you, but so as a painter, I never wanted to be a photorealistic painter. I thought that if you took all that time to carefully paint every hair on a horse, you might as well just take its picture and sit under the tree and drink your nice beer. I wanted to put more feeling and more of myself in my work as opposed to just copying a photograph. And sometimes I succeed, sometimes I don't. But this, I kind of pushed the backlit Tetons there to bring out the aspen trees, and then kind of made up the road. And you just kind of make up stuff after a while and to solidify this small little image. But I do paint outside a lot. So you take information from what you're seeing and then design your painting and pick and choose what nature has provided for you to add to your painting or to create for your painting. And I paint big outside. I've painted 30 by 40s outside. I have a big easel that I can put in the back of my pickup and set it up. You don't want to do it when it's windy, but you can. And then on those big paintings that I do outside, it's a 3-day or pretty much. And I kind of pick days that in the good weather days that are going to be similar every day and go out at the same time every day, lay it in the first day, add some color and some corrections the second day, and then pull some things together and then bring it back to my studio in our house to finish. That's the process for a big piece for myself anyway. So all these little studies end up, pieces and parts go into bigger paintings. I have paintings in 5 different museums, a couple in Wyoming, 3 in Wyoming, 1 in Georgia, and 1 sort of actually in outer space. The Grand Teton Association was purchasing paintings for some years through our great artist friend, Fred Kingwell. And they used to hang in the visitor center at Moose. And I was in there a few months ago and they are no longer hanging. And I keep thinking I'm going to call someone and see where they are because it's a wonderful collection. Grant Hagens and some other artists that are now deceased. John Clymer's in it. A lady from Bondurant is in it. I'm in it. Are you in that collection? Erin, yeah, that's right, Erin. So, yes. Oh, oh, in Arizona. Oh. Oh, wonderful news. Thank you so much. They used to hang there, and I think it was a little bit of a liability to have those within touching distance of so many people. Anyway, so in my 40 some years of painting, I go from groveling at the feet of Greg McHuron, wondering what color to use next, to having some big paintings in some great museums. And I got so much help along the way. I'm happy to help other people anytime. I got to pay it back.
So I want to tie us back to the exhibit for a moment and think about the art that we have on the walls just outside that door, and think about if there's a specific piece, whether it's a photograph or a drawing or a painting, that you feel is a favorite or a connection to, maybe because it's similar to what you make, or maybe because it's completely different. But I'd love to hear those connections.
Where do I start? Um, Frey Dana, I became familiar with Frey Dana a number of decades ago. This is the first time I've actually seen her work in person. I'd only ever seen it in books. And she has just a tremendous story, and a little bit tragic, but her painting is undeniably confident and strong. So the two paintings of hers that I like best here are Edith when she was young, and then the portrait of Clifford. Yeah, the smoking boy. Like if you look at that painting, just the way she painted the stripes on his shirt and the folds, where his arm bends, are just astonishing in their simplicity and their confidence and their subtlety. And that speaks volumes. As an artist, to see that is just astonishing. And plus, he looks like he's 10. Why is he smoking? But then Edith, when she's young, I'll let Jen talk about her.
So Erin and I went into the exhibit before coming back in here just for the very purpose of looking at all the Frey Dana paintings again. And we both had the same two favorites. So we spent a bunch of time talking about them and drooling over them. So the portrait of Edith when she's young, if you haven't seen it, definitely please go check them, but check them all out. All of the art is really wonderful and inspiring. But these pieces for the two of us are inspiring in the brushwork that she uses. The background on this piece is gold. We both want to know where that paint came from. It's not flat at all. You can see the brushwork, and it somehow works beautifully with this painting. The blouse is super simplified into a large kind of off-white shape with tons of very subtle colors, and the brushwork is beautiful. And somehow that makes this shape kind of a counterpoint to the face that's painted incredibly beautifully. And then this necklace or brooch that's on her chest that's bright red and has the tiniest bit of light coming through it. And somehow that incredible ruby color doesn't take away from this face that's looking right into yours. Her hair is painted very simply. Her face is painted with so much emotion. And it's just incredibly inspiring. Yeah, just masterful. Do you want to say something?
Yeah, and both of these portraits are very simple, and that's part of the draw, is just the clarity, and the clarity and the focus and the simplicity is the elegance.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
So I'm going to take a little different approach to this question because when I first received, when we got these prep questions, what strikes me about this exhibit is more the thread of the stories. And I think that's what really draws me to just the storytelling aspect. You can have these individual stories, which are really unique, but together they weave this really powerful message of creation. And for me, that connection of past to present, I just love that. I just love feeling like we're part of this larger thread and continuum of women creators and artists across time, across geography. And that's what I try to do with my work. It's the individual stories, but it's the collective. And then having an exhibit that's toured 8 venues now, the work that I deliver to these venues is the same every time, but each institution curates it differently. So I look at that now when I see shows. And so I just love even like this orange thread connecting all these women, just this very like graphic display. So I just think it's a really powerful curation. And I just love the individual stories are so strong, but together it's just like this endless continuum of time. So that's what really draws me to this exhibit.
I'm going to take this opportunity to thank the museum for hosting this exhibit. I think it's important, and for having all of us. I've enjoyed hearing your stories. I've enjoyed sharing mine. Thank you for all of you who are here to celebrate this beautiful building that we could be so proud of, and the great work that's being done here. So thank you very much.
And since I got here too late to see the exhibition, which I'll look at when we're done, I do want to make a little comment about, you've just heard some great descriptions about what struck the 3 gals that saw the work there. And as an artist, we are inundated with everything visual. Everything visual, we just live in a visual world. It's not really a thinking world. It's more of a reactive thing. And the things we pick out that you all described so greatly, it's important to us to take a hold of those instances of click, and things that we don't maybe gravitate to. We might not find anything that clicks in our brain visually. And so as artists, we're trying to collect your vision or our vision in our painting for you to gravitate to. That's the way I look at it.
I'm going to ask my final question so that we do have some moments for audience questions. So just a reminder to think on those. I would like to ask you, as your journey of artists, what would you say would be obstacles you have encountered and hopefully, as you're here, overcome being here in a small town of Jackson Hole, or in the line with this exhibit, being women? As wonderful as it is, we know there are burden pieces as well.
First of all, thank you. I like seeing people my own age out here. So when I talk about this, you're not going to think that I'm crazy. But when I first started out painting, one of the obstacles that I ran into was that, being a young female, was that it was very difficult to be taken seriously because people assumed that the minute I got married and had children, I was going to give up this ridiculous hobby and get a real life. Well, that never happened, and I'm still painting. And that was, people, if you weren't around here then, it was a very real obstacle. And you could call it a stereotype, but it was just a reality of the way people looked at you and regarded you. So to prove yourself in Jackson, in a small town, you had to be pretty darn tough and pretty darn independent. That has changed quite a lot. So one of the advantages, as we've all spoken about, living here is a small community and a very supportive community. And so there is that. And it's easy to meet other artists, or it was a lot easier, I think, back in the day. Now everything's moved online. So women artists are a lot more prevalent now, and people don't make the same assumptions or judgments. Uh, Things have changed quite a lot. They're easier now in some ways with social media because you can, post your stuff online. But they're harder too because it's more difficult now to spend time with our friends, our artist friends, and make the connections in person.
For me, I feel like I've been really fortunate having come here and started my career here because I have had some wonderful male mentors who took me seriously, like Greg. After I had my kiddo Kai, I had a show. I scheduled a show almost immediately afterwards, and it was the craziest thing. I don't know why. Well, I do know why I did it. I did it because I didn't want to stop painting, and so I had this deadline. I had a show that I had to get on the wall. And one of the things that I loved about Greg was that he would show up for every show I ever had, no matter when it was, no matter what he was going through. He would always show up. He would walk around. He would give me feedback. But there was one show I remember specifically where I was really struggling because it was hard to pay for daycare and still find time to paint, and I had to have a job in order to have daycare, and I was feeling really low and just not being able to figure out how I was going to make it all work. And he came to me and he said, if you have to get a job, it doesn't matter. You're still going to make art. You have that fire in your belly. And that moment has stuck with me all along. And I'll tell you, my kiddo is about to turn 19, and it has been a struggle all along to keep making art, to keep paying the bills, all of that stuff. I had another artist, a pretty well-known guy. I'm not going to use any names, but he came to me one time, and we were talking about things, and I said, it's really hard to like get in the studio sometimes. I'm not finding enough time. And he said to me, well, we all have the same amount of time in a day. And I thought, yeah, but you have a wife who takes care of your kids and does your marketing for you, and you get to paint all the time. And I don't have that. So, that is a different thing. But on the flip side, I have my kid to inspire me. And those things are all part of my experience. And so I don't have any like negative feelings about that. But it is a challenge as a woman to, keep all those balls in the air. But we have a lot of support here, and a lot of people that give us encouragement and keep us feeling like it's worthwhile. So that's my experience.
I'm just thinking about when my exhibit came to the Art Association Gallery and Center Galleries in 2021. And it opened after I had had my second child, and I was 2 months postpartum, and I had postpartum anxiety and depression. And it was, even though I'd created the body of work, I'd toured a couple times, it was a struggle to show up for that moment. And I was so lucky to have you and just have the support of the community. I definitely think since becoming a mom, it's created just different challenges because you don't have that unlimited time and energy. And I'm creating a book for my project right now, and I keep asking myself, what did I get into? Because I have so many deadlines, and it's just really intense pressure. And since I became a mom, I really scaled back. And so diving back into the book process has really been just diving headfirst back in. And it's a totally different creative process than what I'm used to. My process to create this body of work was very much meeting people, being out in the world, and to some degree getting like a quick gratification, even though I still had to wait for my film to be processed. With a book, it's this really introspective, focused, intense process. But I think so much of my Wyoming experience has been centered around attention of, when I grew up in Powell, having so much freedom, but a part of me feeling confined. And so I'm always playing between trying to break free of that confinement that a lot of times I feel just myself, and my work and my creations and connecting with people and learning becomes my way to navigate that tension. And I think at the core of creativity, it's a lot of problem solving, and you just have to keep going, and you have to, sometimes the hardest part is just starting. But then you do build that momentum and you start connecting with people. So yeah, I think you just have to have that devotion and that persistence. And if you can just keep daring to look at new angles and not get discouraged when you get that no, just keep moving forward, then you find your way.
I think the running joke among women artists is that we all want a wife. We all need a wife. But I'm in absolute awe of mothers who are artists. I'm just I don't have kids of my own, but I don't know how you do it. I didn't know quite how to answer this question as far as what are some of the obstacles that I've had to overcome, because I just feel like I've had so much privilege and so many amazing opportunities and good fortune. So that's where I land for sure. I think probably my biggest obstacle is myself, and believing that I can do it, or having the courage, playing small. That's my biggest battle. That's where you come in, because I might not be the only insecure artist out there. But the fact that there are those of you who give feedback that might be a little bit more objective than my own harsh critic, that is what might just make the difference in an artist's day, to keep them going, because we're about to quit. I was working on your piece of watercolor paper today. Watercolor is not for the weak of heart. Kay Stratman can talk about that, because it just has a little mind of its own, and you just have to have so much courage to keep when the water is flowing and dripping, and just keep going through with that. And you just don't I'm not always the best judge of my own work, because we're just too close to it. So the fact that you come to see our work, the fact that you and are cheering us on at the quick draw, we feel that. We really feel that you want us to succeed as we're doing this incredibly vulnerable thing. It's like standing naked in the town square. It really feels like that. And all right, I don't know. I've never. But I just always feel you're rooting for me. And I'll be honest, I need that. So thank you.
As far as struggles go, every artist has them, and they come and go on a whim, the coming and the going. When I was just a young painter, it was a much slower life here, and the traffic was not horrendous. And I would paint by the side of the road safely everywhere. And I endured the cat calls and the honking and the whatever. My friends would honk at me, and I'm like, oh, okay, as they drove by. But I sort of got to be known as somebody that painted all the time. And that led to associations with people that own ranches and properties here. I hayed for the Hanson Mead Ranch for some years in the late summers. I hayed I kept painting the loose haystacks. Many of you remember the Hereford Ranch loose haystacks. And I guess I was the first person to use them as a subject, according to Ralph Gill. He bought my very first one for $60, and he showed it to me later, and it still had the price tag on it. And I looked at it and I said, well, it's not too bad a painting. It was a really early painting, but I painted them a lot because they were fascinating to me. And then pretty soon the ranch manager would say, hey, when we're done with this field, the haystacks are built, you can drive out here. Come out here and paint on our property. And then pretty soon it's like, hey, could you run a rake and a buck rake for us while you're at it? So I did that. And some of you might remember the fire, the Green Knoll fire that started south of Wilson, and it was a big deal because it got going in a hurry. And we went into the far west ranch house for dinner that noontime, and it was just starting. And we were driving out there in the pickup to get to dinner, and I go, whoa, that doesn't look good. And we figured somebody had called it in, and then we went back out and hayed. And the more we hayed, the bigger the fire got. And so I stopped after I got done working that day. I stopped and did a painting of the haystack with the fire smoke behind there. And it was just a little painting. So those kind of associations were invaluable to me to get to know people here. And of course, then they'd want me to come cowboy with them, which is of course my passion and my mental therapy. I don't have to worry about anything except what the cows are doing and what my horse is doing, and I'm good. So that association was invaluable to me and helped me through some rough times when they decided to buy a little painting from me.
I'm curious if there is a question in the audience as we get close to wrapping up. If there's any questions from the group, my request is if you would share them, I'm going to repeat them with the microphone, or you can use the microphone, but somebody has to use the microphone. So you tell me which. It's just because it's recorded, so I'll tell it after you, but you ask it. Okay, so I'm going to repeat it to my best of my ability, but thinking about male mentors and feminist and masculine characteristics of pieces. Does that sound accurate? Hmm.
I would say no, especially when you're looking at artwork that is done by people that have been painting for a long time.
Come to the gallery and we're going to play a game. And I'm going to put some paintings in front of you and test you and see if you can tell if it's done by a man or a woman. It's just a fun game. I don't think you can either, and I'm going to prove that in my game. But we're talking about women artists, and we're all women up here. And I've learned so much from all of these women. I've also had incredible mentors in this valley. We've had Connie Schwerin, we've had Thomas Moran, we've had Greg McCurron and Scott Christensen. We've had these incredible. I aspire to make art that is without gender. Because I think that that's what art is. I am, as a woman artist, I owe a debt of gratitude to my mother's generation, because it's fascinating to be alive at this point in time in the art world, because so much so many gains for women were made in my mom's generation. I feel like we're riding those waves. I went to 2 colleges that didn't admit women when I was born. So think about in just one lifetime, how many doors have opened, and I get to walk through those doors. Um, and I look forward to a time, and we're getting there. And thanks to the internet, there are competitions now where you're just given a number and there's no name associated with in the jury process. It's just a click yes or click no when the judges are judging them. It's taken gender out of the conversation, and exciting things are happening there. So I feel very, very lucky to be alive right now because I have the opportunity to go to these colleges and learn. The generation before me, right, my mentors, it was different then. I think. I don't know. Talk to mom.
I like to think a lot in terms of energy. And so I like to think of masculine and feminine energy. And I do think that yin and yang, the masculine energy is that doing, the feminine energy is being. And I think we all contain that. But I have had really all my photography mentors are men. And I think part of that might be the field I went into, which is commercial photography. Just that profession is still pretty male dominated. But I did learn that energy of doing, which has been so pivotal for me. One of my photography mentors at Northwest, he was a master at photographing lightning. So he knew that exact second when to press the shutter, and he's globally renowned for this. And so his advice was always with artistry, just to be receptive. And so when I had this idea to tell my first story about some generational farming families, I told him about it. The next day he came back and he said, "You have a show at the Homesteader Museum, which is in Powell, just the little local museum." And he said, "It's in April, so you better get to work." Okay. But that put me on the process of bringing this idea and this vision to life. And then Peter, who I worked for in New York City, he ran one of the probably busiest headshot studios in New York. He was the most expensive headshot photographer at the time. He was a machine. He would photograph 3 people in a day, 4 days a week. And it was just nonstop. My first day on the job, I walked into his studio. There was a hurling phone ringing at my face. I thankfully caught it. I answered it. He's telling me what to say. I mean, it was just trial by fire, but any idea he had, he just did it. And I'd be like, whoa, 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 don't we need to think this through a little bit, organize? And he just did it. And my husband's similar. He's an entrepreneur and very much embodies, I think, that energy of doing. So again, I think we all contain that, but I think for me, it's been powerful to have that, to see that, to be exposed to that. Because when I came back to Wyoming and was thinking about what to do and how to create, I had these experiences. I had already created a little show thanks to Woody, and then working for Peter, it gave me that confidence of like, oh, well, he doesn't have it all figured out and he's just trying. So taking those risks. But then, of course, my work is centered around women. So I love that energy too. But yeah, I guess that's kind of how I think about it.
I love what you were just explaining, because it made me think about the fact that the men that have helped me, the male artists who have encouraged me and taught me things, I don't feel like that has changed. Well, and one of the benefits of the mentors that I have had is that none of them wanted me to paint like them or make art like them. They wanted me to figure out my own voice and to be the best artist that I could be. But I think that one of the things that I definitely learned working with male mentors that maybe is a little bit different, or at least in my generation, was different between men and women, is that the men that I painted with didn't make apologies for how much they priced their art, or for going out and asking to be in a show, or approaching a gallery, or there was never any kind of that thought like, maybe I shouldn't be here. They were bold. They took risks. They encouraged me to do the same thing. They didn't expect me to apologize for doing what I wanted to do, or finding my own path. And I think that as a person myself, I tend to be more of a a little bit like, I'm sorry, can I just ask you for this help or whatever? And I think that I learned a lot from those mentors that you that doesn't have to be a part of being a woman artist, that you can step into your own thing and not make apologies for that. So as far as male and female like art styles, I don't know if I see that. I mean, I definitely think there are women artists who really pursue something that is feminine, that they're kind of creating that's part of their work. But as a landscape painter, I don't feel like there's much difference. I think it's much more about personal experience and that communication. So
Sir, one of the first things that you mentioned was that our mentors were male. I would like to point out that Miss KJ Wipfler over here is a tremendous teacher. And every once in a while, periodically through the summer, she would, do some painting class outside or some workshop. And I believe I showed up to every single one I could. And she was one of the absolute best teachers I've ever had, because she just broke it down into the bare essentials, and she didn't cut you any slack, but she wasn't mean about it either. It's like, Kathy, I learned a lot from you, so thank you. And the only reason you weren't one of my mentors is because you were always out haying and cowboying and stuff. Yeah. We do. But as far as and that's kind of the classic paint like a man. Actually, it truly is. And that was what they said about Frey Dana back in the day, was she paints like a man. Well, I mean, I think that's great. I want to paint like me. And I don't believe that you can change your style any more than you can change your handwriting. So if you have that confidence, like Kay, is like, I would recognize your work anywhere. I would recognize all of your work anywhere, just by your brush strokes and by your drawing style and whatnot. And that to me speaks louder than gender.
I think that may be our time, but if you have a question, I'm hoping that our panelists will stick around for a moment, and please feel free to come ask them. And as a reminder, we have another event next week on Erin's favorite artist, Frey Dana. That'll be here on Wednesday. So if you're curious, there is a little flyer, it sounds like the right word, on the door that gives you a little more information. And thank you so much for being here.